Ahoy there, mates! Hello, friends! Greetings from the seven seas. Welcome to the VHS Pirate Ship. And welcome to this installment of REEK of the Week! A little segment here on the VHS Pirate Ship where I take a look at 80s and 90s nostalgia and take a trip down memory lane. That's right, it's the show that has the sweet stench of childhood memories and reeks of nostalgia. It's REEK of the Week! So without further ado, let's get right into it and talk about something that has to be in the top 5 greatest toys of all time and revolutionized childhood travel as we knew it. Yes, that transportation wonder, that miraculous design known as the Big Wheel. The Big Wheel made its debut in 1969 and was produced by Lewis Marks and Company. And this would go on to be a mega hit through the 70s and an ultra hit through the 80s. The 90s were no different, and they're still in production today. So what is it about these things that seemingly are no more than a plastic tricycle? Well, it's all in its perfect design. You see, its low center of gravity makes this easy to ride and way safer than a bicycle. Though that didn't stop us from trying to take these things off some pretty sweet jumps. And I emphasize try. Yeah, every now and again you'd wipe out on these and totally eat shit, but you weren't too injured simply because there wasn't a great distance to fall because of its design. Now, you might take some skin off your knee or take a hunk of meat off your elbow, but you'd be fine. Which reminds me, I probably should do a REEK of the Week about back teen. Back then as kids, we were made of some stern stuff. Sure, we got hurt. Sure, we cried. A lot. Sure, we bled. A lot more. But we would get right back on our big wheels and try again. Hell, back then we had rusted metal playground equipment that was on concrete playgrounds. We swam in dirty creeks and lakes. We drank directly from the garden hose, and no one had a peanut allergy. Yep, we were rough, tough, and hard to bluff. Kids that had never tasted quiche. Really, Adam? Hell, you couldn't even get quiche back then. And if you can guess what movie that reference came from, I'll give you a shout out in my next video, so let me know in the comments below. But anyway, where was I? Ah, yes, big wheels. You know, you could argue that the popularity of these wondrous things really took off in the 80s because that's primarily when the licensed characters came into play, which meant that if something had a cartoon or a very popular TV show, it was going to have a big wheel. An extremely clever marketing ploy, and we all really appreciated it. The amount of big wheels they had was glorious and insane. Do you like Gremlins? Well, they had a Gremlins one. Do you like E.T.? Well, they had an E.T. one. Do you like Knight Rider? Well, they had a Knight Rider one, and I actually had this one, and I loved it. Do you like the show Chips? Well, they had a Chips one. Do you like Dungeons and Dragons? Well, they had one for that. They even had one for Sectors. How about Mask? Do you like Mask? I'm talking about the cartoon show, not the movie with Cher. Well, they had one for Mask. And this one tries to replicate the premise of the show, which is, of course, vehicles that transform into battlements. But I mean, really, this wasn't too impressive because it was just 2 panels on the head that flipped up. But, you know, it's the thought that counts. And it was good enough for us, that's for sure. Yeah, this was a really cool cartoon show and an awesome toy line. And speaking of that, they had ones for the Transformers and GoBots, and these things actually transformed. Well, really, it was just the head that did something neat and interesting, nothing really too impressive, but still, it was pretty damn cool. So they kinda transformed, and that was good enough. Do you like the Thundercats? They had one for the Thundercats. How about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe? Did you like that? Well, they had one for that. In fact, they had 2. How about the real Ghostbusters? Did you like them? Of course, we all did. Well, they had one for them. In fact, they also had 2 as well. How about Dukes of Hazzard? Did you like them? Well, they didn't just have one, they also had 2. They had a General Lee and a Daisy Duke. And of course, the Daisy Duke one was meant more for girls. And if you were a girl, you certainly weren't left out of the big wheel fun. Sure, they had the Barbie big wheel. Even the Cabbage Patch Kids got a big wheel. But you know, surprisingly, there wasn't one for She-Ra. I wonder why. They certainly missed the boat on that one, I think. And I mean, there was even ambiguous ones too, like the Smurfs or the Muppet Show. And if the Muppet Show big wheel was too ambiguous for you, they had a Miss Piggy edition. They had a Pac-Man one. And if that was too ambiguous for you, then they had a Miss Pac-Man one. They had a Star Trek one that came with this really cool control panel thing on the handlebars. Nice touch. There was a Superman one, a Batman one, Wonder Woman one, Spider-Man one, Incredible Hulk one. These things were everywhere, which leads us to the one that everybody wanted the Rambo big wheel. This was it. It had gun turrets on the handlebars, and it came with a Rambo headband. And this is based on the Rambo cartoon show, which I still cannot believe they had. And here's why I say that. Because yes, the popularity of Rambo, especially in the commercial market with the toys and the cartoon and whatnot, is based on Rambo 2 and 3, which portrays the character as a marketable action hero, which, for all intents and purposes, he is. But if you were to base that on the first movie, First Blood, which all the other movies stem from, then you would see that these movies probably shouldn't be marketed to kids, because the first movie is not a kid's movie. And you could argue that kids maybe shouldn't see the other two movies either. So I see both sides of the coin here, because yes, I think it was ludicrous that Rambo was marketed to kids, but on the same token, I think it was awesome that it was, and another reason why the 80s were so great, because you couldn't get away with that nowadays. And speaking of things that were marketed to kids that really shouldn't have been, there was a RoboCop cartoon show, and I wonder why there wasn't a RoboCop big wheel. Can you fly, Bobby? And how about Terminator 2? There was a toy line based on Terminator 2, so why wasn't there a big wheel, I wonder? I need your clothes, your boots, and your big wheel. And man, it sure would be awesome if they made a maximum overdrive big wheel. And yes, I know that most of the big wheels that I mentioned aren't technically big wheels because they weren't produced by the Marx company. But hey, if you have a great idea, other companies are gonna rip it off. So these aren't big wheels, they're power cycles. Or hot cycles. Really, they're just big wheels. That's what we call them. That's what they fucking are. So yeah, in closing, big wheels were extremely important to our childhoods. They were an awesome toy and a tremendous idea. And of course, there's a big wheel featured in one of the most iconic scenes in The Shining. So I'm happy I had one. I'm happy they made so many, and I'm happy they still make them today. So that about does it for this week's REEK of the Week. I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. Be sure to hit subscribe and give a like. And take care out there, and I'll see you next time, only on Captain Adam's VHS Pirate Ship.